Now we know that based upon the availability of charge carrier in a material, the current can be of several types, and this is based upon several concepts that are applicable in different contexts or different material. The most common being the metallic conduction. So metallic conduction would give you metallic current, and it is also generally referred to as the conduction current. Before we attempt to understand metallic conduction, we need to have an idea about atomic structure. So initially when it was known that there are subatomic particles also and atom is divisible, so then there was opinion and there were postulates about how these different subatomic particles are placed in an atom and what would be the atomic structure. The first model was given by Sir J.J. Thomson, and that was the plum pudding model, which simply says that you have the charge which is uniformly distributed in the matter of atom such that the whole atom is neutral, and we call it the plum pudding model. Later, with the famous Rutherford's alpha particle gold foil bombardment experiment, it was shown that instead of the plum pudding model, it is nuclear model of atom, which states that most of the positivity or all of the positivity is in central location of the atom, and it occupies a very less space as compared to the overall size of the atom, and electrons are revolving around this nucleus which is positively charged. It was almost analogous to the heliocentric planetary model where sun is in center and all the planets are revolving around the sun. So on the same assumptions, Rutherford proposed this model, that is nuclear model of atom. Now later there were some questions on the Rutherford's nuclear model. First was that the electron being in acceleration cannot be stable in such a orbit, and it is going to collapse spirally into this nucleus. Number one. Number two, it should give a continuous radiation if it is spiraling and it is going to collapse in the nucleus. So first is that this model is not going to be a stable model because electron cannot move like this. When they are moving like this in circular orbits, they will lose energy, and when they lose energy, they will have to reduce the radii, and then finally they will fall back into the nucleus. And till such situation, all the electrons fall back into the nucleus, there will be continuous radiation that should be emitted out from these atoms, but that is not the case. Atom is a stable structure, number one. Number two, atom emits radiation, but the radiations are not continuous, rather it gives a line spectrum. So it was not on the basis of Rutherford's nuclear model to explain that how come lines, discrete radiations of discrete wavelength or frequency that we call line spectrum was emitted by the atom, and how come electrons are stable and orbiting in these orbits around the nucleus. So these were the questions on the nuclear model of Rutherford. Then came the Bohr model. The Bohr model was based on the quantum physics of those times, that was developing those time, and he postulated that there is a nucleus and there are some, not all, but there are some special orbits that are possible in which electron can move, and in these orbits electron is stable, it can move stably, it will not fall back into the nucleus, and this is how we had a better explanation of the atomic structure. And with his further postulates, he also proved that the energy difference between these levels is fixed, and that is given by the, this is the energy between the two successive, which is Planck's constant, and this is the radiation given by the electron if it falls from a higher orbit to lower orbit. So without going much into these things, it was even better model than the Rutherford model, I would say, and because the two major questions that were against the nuclear model were satisfactorily explained by the Bohr model. So this is all about a recap of the atomic structure. So when we say the Bohr model of atom, we have a nucleus, it will be surrounded by electrons. Electrons would move in a fixed orbit now, which has some discrete energy, and that energy is possible at certain levels only. So all these things are there, but this is when the atom is in isolation. But when several atoms come together to form a lattice or to form a metal lattice structure, then the picture is slightly different. And as they say that the outermost electrons are the valence electrons and the inner electrons are not valence electrons. So for metallic lattice or metallic crystal lattice, it was proposed that when more atoms come closer and they form a metal lattice or a crystal, this kind of energy level is not applicable, and these electrons come together, and the outermost electrons, that means the valence electrons, they divide them into different bands, that is known as energy band theory. So now instead of energy states, they will be having energy band. Band means, let's say thousands of atoms are packed into one lattice in one crystal structure. So outermost electrons of all atoms will constitute band. Instead of constituting several individual their own energy states, their energy band will be there. The lesser energy band is known as the valence band, and the higher energy band is known as the conduction band. So all the electrons that are the valence electrons will come together and they will reorganize themselves into two bands. The electrons with lesser energy will be constituting the valence band, and the electrons with the higher energy will be constituting the conduction band. Now the energy gap between these two is known as the forbidden gap. So if this gap is so low that these electrons can jump to the upper conduction band, the current or the availability of free charge is available to make the electrical current happen. So based upon these bands and this forbidden gap, now we have three conditions. Either this forbidden gap is very, very large, or it's small, or it's not at all. Not at all, it is there. So this one is a case of a metal. In a metal, we will find that there is no forbidden gap and these two bands overlap. So there is no band, there is no forbidden gap. This is your conduction band and this is your valence band. So as such, there is no division, which means the valence band electrons can easily enter into the conduction band, and now the electrons are, if we have electrons in the conduction band, these electrons are free, these electrons are not under influence of the atom or the nucleus to which they belong, and such electron is available for conduction of current. So in metal, there is no forbidden gap and electrons can flow easily. In a semiconductor, this band is very small. This band is very small. Now I am drawing with blue color a very thin band. This is the forbidden gap. So this is the condition we see in a semiconductor. So it is very small. So at 0 degree Kelvin, there will be no electron in the conduction band and there will be all electrons in the valence band. So there is no conduction possible at 0 degree Kelvin. But when the room temperature or environmental temperature rises, the electrons of valence band will acquire some energy and they move up to the conduction band, and then they are available for conduction. So that is the case in the semiconductors. In case of insulator, this forbidden gap is going to be very, very large. So if we have the comparative thickness of this forbidden gap, I would say that this is the situation of an insulator, which means no current is possible at all at any temperature. This is the situation in which at room temperature it is possible, the semiconductor, and there will be very, very thin band or no band in case of metals or conductors. So for conductors there is no forbidden gap. Electrons are easily available in the conduction band. So at 0 degree Kelvin or at room temperature, it is possible all the time that the metallic wires or the metal will conduct electricity. At 0 degree Kelvin or at 0 degree temperature, it is not possible for semiconductors to conduct, but at room temperature they become conductor because some electrons acquire the kinetic energy from the heat around and they come to the upper band and now they are available. But in the case of insulators, the forbidden gap is so high, so huge that there is no possibility of any electron to come from this valence band into the conduction band to make the electricity happen. So these are the three situations which now we see example of an electric wire, and briefly how does an electric current flow. So we'll assume that at this point we have higher potential. So by convention we draw positive for higher potential. So we assume that this part of the wire or this part of the wire is at higher potential and this part of the wire is at low potential. And now based upon the valence and conduction band theory or energy band theory that is applicable in case of metal lattice or crystal structure or the metallic structure of this material, we know that now we have electrons available that are free in the conduction band. So now we have electrons or the charge carriers that are available in this material. But when there is no potential difference, all these electrons are having random motions. So depending upon the temperature of the wire or of the material, all these electrons are having random motions. So they randomly are moving, and at any cross section there is no net movement of charge. Let's say if 15 electrons are moving in this direction, 15 are coming back to this area from several directions. So which means at any cross section there is no net charge that is crossing from one point to another point. So there is no net flow of charge and hence there is no current if there is no potential difference. But now when we apply potential difference, let's say we have now a battery here which applies a potential difference to this wire, automatically electrons of this part gain more potential energy, and because they are let free, they are free to move as per the definition of the conduction band, they are not influenced by their atom or by their parent nuclei or by any neighboring nuclei. So these electrons are free and now they have acquired more potential energy. So automatically they will try to change their random motion into more vigorous random motion. That means their random motions will be having more kinetic energy, which means now they will move in this direction with greater energy, greater kinetic energy. But the moment they move forward, they will hit or they will collide with some other electron and they will transfer their energy to some other electron and so on. So electrons of this part will move the kinetic energy from this place to this place, then to this place, and finally it will come to this part of the circuit, which means the least potential or the lower potential. So this way the electrical energy is converted into the kinetic energy, and the kinetic energy is the absolute temperature, is the measure of absolute temperature of this material, which means this wire will get heated. And this is the reason, and this is the concept of resistance, which we will be doing in details later. So here we can understand that by this mechanism we have converted the electrical energy into kinetic energy and finally the heat of this wire. So this is how the current flows. Now actually the electron do not flow from this point to this point or to this point. They slightly drift themselves from one part to the other part in the direction of lowered potential, and then they transfer the potential energy or the kinetic energy to the other electron, which means practically they move a very slight bit in the direction of the lower potential, and so on. All electrons move like this, but the energy decreases in this direction. This slightly right side or slightly directional movement of electron, which is now less random and more directional, is known as a drift, electron drift. So we can say that the electrons are drifted under influence of the potential difference, and this drift is carried by the other neighboring electrons, and so on, and the current flows like this. The energy travels from this part to this part with the speed of light. Doesn't take time like some matter travels under influence of potential energy or electrical energy. So energy is transferred. If you see any of this section, you will find that the number of electrons are same, but the charge is slightly more drifting. So now you have a net charge of movement from this place to this place, and the electrons which enter here in this whole process, when these electrons, some electrons enter here, these electrons are pumped by this chemical reaction battery again to this place, which means the number of electrons entering, exiting, entering will be pushed to this, so the voltage is maintained. So this is the concept by which we explain the metallic conduction. Now there are certain key messages to be taken from this. Number one, the charge carrier is only electron, and you know electron is a fundamental electric charge. So the mass, the charge, the nature of the charge carrier, which is seen in metallic conduction, is a constant feature. So you have electron only, you cannot have proton, you won't have any atom moving, you won't have any molecule moving. So that is the situation. So the type of charge carrier is constant. The charge carried by each charge carrier is constant. A negative charge will be carried, and the charge to the amount of the charge of the electron will be carried, and the material is also a crystal lattice, which means an orderly material through which these electrons are passing. So the material is also an orderly metallic or crystal lattice. So these two very important things are to be taken from this explanation, and this is very much important to understand the metallic conduction and how is it different from electrolytic conduction or the displacement current. So how a metallic current flows, actually it is a flow of the electrons. So when we say electron, we mean to say that the negative charge will flow only, positive charge will not flow, number one. Number two, the amount of charge carried by each charge carrier is same because electrons are the fundamental electric charges and they have a fixed value of electric charge, that is in negative. And the medium in which they are traveling is also an orderly lattice. So that is also something to be understood. So these are the important features of the metallic conduction. So friends, today we will do electrolytic conduction. Having done the metallic conduction, this is the next common conduction that we find in some materials, and this is basically different from metallic conduction in many contexts. To understand electrolytic conduction, we need to understand ionic compounds and their dissociation. Let us take some example of ionic compounds like sodium chloride, potassium chloride, silver chloride. So all these are ionic compounds. Now break them, they will have a tendency to gain positive and negative charges, but they are in a neutral ionic compound. So friends, when I say that these anions or cations are held together in ionic compound in a stable neutral condition due to this Coulomb's force, we have to understand that there is a factor known as K or dielectric constant, which depends upon the material or the medium in which these anions or cations are held together. Now for air, for water, for other media, this K value is different. If we put these ionic compounds in some solution, this is an ionic compound put in some solution, the value of K changes, and when the value of K changes, the Coulomb force of attraction between two charged bodies will change. Now for water, let's say an example, this value is very less. This value is almost 80 times less than it is in air. So if we have an ionic and cation ionic compound like NaCl, which is neutral molecule, and if we put it in water, the Coulomb's force of attraction that was holding it together will be lesser, and in the water they will break down into their constituent ions that are sodium positive ion and chloride negative ion. Similar breakdown happens in case of potassium chloride also, in case of silver chloride also. So we can say an ionic compound in its solution, where you have some solvent, will break down into its constituents anions and cation and anion, and this process is known as dissociation. So an ionic compound is dissociated into its constituent cation and anion. Now these are the free charge carriers that are available in some solutions that will have a solvent and that will have these anions and cations. Symbolically we can say these are the cations and these red one are the anions. They will have such number that in totality it is a neutral solution. However, you will have these free charge particles. Sometimes they are not atoms, they may be molecules also, which will have some positive or negative net charge over them, and we call them cation or anion in species. They may be simple atoms like these, or they may be compounds also, but they will have a positive or negative net charge on them. And when they have this net charge, now you know if they are subjected to a potential difference. If they are subjected to a potential difference, let's say now we have two poles created in this liquid which is having these anions, cations and this solution. Now we have these two poles created, and one pole is positive, that means it is at higher potential, and the other pole is at negative. The natural tendency of the cations would be to move towards the negative pole, and the natural tendency of the anions would be to move towards the positive pole, and this is where from these nomenclature has come. Positive pole is known as anode, so the ions or the species of ion that are attracted by the anode are known as anions, and since it is positive pole, so it will only attract the negative species, and vice versa, the cations will be positively charged and they are attracted by the cathode, which is a negative pole in a solution. So now because these charge carriers are moving and they are moving under the influence of potential difference, so that serves our basic definition of current, which says the movement of charge or the movement of charge carrier under influence of potential difference, in which they will move from higher potential to lower potential, is referred to as electric current. So this is a situation where we have electric current. However, this current is different from the metallic current in many ways. Number one, the charge carriers. The charge carrier in the metallic one, they were electrons, and now here in electrolytic conduction it is ions, or a species of ion with positive or negative net charge over them. Second is a medium. Here the medium is metallic crystal. Crystalline medium is here, and here you will have a solution. So now, based upon the two fundamental differences between the context of metallic conduction and electrolytic conductions, we have some secondary implication of these basic fundamental differences. The first and foremost is here the charge carries an electron, and here the charge carrier is going to be an ionic species. This can be positive also, this can be negative also. So from here only we start the differences. So here we can have the charge carrier for both the type of charges. We will have positive also and we will have negative also. We call them anions and cations, and they move towards their force of attraction. Now here we only have electron because the atoms are fixed in the crystal lattice and they cannot move. Only the electrons in the conduction band move. So here the charge that would be moving is only the negative charge, and that is electron. Now because electron is a fundamental electric charge, so it has a fixed value of its charge. The value of its charge is fixed. Its mass is fixed. Now here, because ions may be cations and anions, and they may be of different types. Let's say we have a sodium ion, we have a potassium ion, we have a silver ion, and we may have other ions also. So you can see that the weight of a sodium or a potassium or a silver, in that case we have chloride also as an ion. We may have other molecules also or other atoms also with net negative charge. So here we can see that it is a species of positive or negative ions, and they vary in their size and they vary in their positive or negative net charge also. Some may have, like in case of aluminium, in case of zinc, some may have more than one net positive charge or more than one negative charge. So here the charge can also be more than one, but it will be in the multiple of E. That is there, but the charge can be 2 plus, 3 plus, 1 plus, charge can be 2 minus, 3 minus, 1 minus, and we may have different atoms, or we may have a molecule also with a net charge. So in all such conditions, the ion or the charge carrier is going to be highly variable depending upon the electrolyte that is given for the electrolytic solution, which has the solvent and which has some ionic compound which is dissociated in this solution. So that is one thing. Second thing is, think of a situation, electrons that are very small in size, that are very light in weight, and they are all same, and they are moving under influence of potential difference from this part to this part, and they have very orderly structure through which they are moving. That means we have a crystalline metallic structure in which all the atoms are strongly fixed in a very orderly fashion. So in such a situation, electron being smaller, being lighter, and all electrons that are moving are being similar or same rather, they have a very good opportunity to move from one part of the crystal to other part with very less resistance or with very less collisions or with very less disorderliness. Now think of another situation. Now in contrast, try to visualize a situation in which ions in an electrolytic conduction travel or flow under influence of potential difference. This is your anode with positive charge. This is your cathode with negative charge. We have blue one with negative charge, that means an ion. We have the yellow one with positive charge, that means cations. And as I say that they may have 2 plus, they may have 2 minus, they may have 1 plus, different charges, and their weights are also different, their sizes are also vary. Now such ion or charge carriers are going to move in this direction, or they are going to move in this direction, and more so they are doing this in a solution which is going to be viscous. It will have some viscosity, it is not free air, as free as air, or it is not vacuum. So here you can understand, we can imagine that these ions are going to come across a lot of resistance. That will be mechanical also, that will be electrical also, that will be inertial also, in comparison to the metallic electronic conduction, in which only electrons of similar type were moving. They were very light, they were very small, and they were moving in a very orderly situation where all the atoms are strongly fixed at the crystal lattice corners, and electrons were just zipping from one part to other part under influence of the potential difference. So these are the differences you can see. Now we have one more difference. The temperature, if it is given to electrolytic conduction or if it is given to metallic conduction, temperature here will decrease the conduction or it will make the electrons movement tough. So if we have temperature raised for a metal, we will have poorer conduction of that metal. But in contrast, if temperature is raised in this electrolyte, this is going to give them a better situation. You can understand viscosity will be lesser, kinetic energy will be more. So different factors are there, and based upon all these factors, we say that metallic conduction is fundamentally different from electrolytic conduction, though both of them carry electrical energy from one part to another part or from higher potential to lower potential. Now friends, we need to understand one more aspect of electrolytic conduction that is not seen in metallic conduction. Here it is not just an energy driven movement is seen. This is a very different context in which an electrolytic conduction happen, and we should say that this is not only an electrical picture, this is an electrochemical process. So here we need to understand that electrolytic conductions involve electrochemical processes commonly referred to as redox reactions. And previously where I said that if we have a lot of positive ions, they will tend to move and they will try to move and they will shift from this to this place automatically under influence of the Coulomb force of repulsion. But such situation sometimes do not happen, because here it is not just atoms, it is not just the charges, they are species, there may be some molecules, there may be some atoms, and here electrochemical stability is more considered than just the Coulomb forces of attraction or repulsion. Friends, electrochemical processes or redox reactions are explained on the basis of orbital theory, which states that if we have filled orbitals, they give more stability, and if we have completely unfilled orbitals, they give more stability to an atom rather than if we have an unfilled orbital. So if we have an orbital in which we have only one electron, it is a situation, it is a possibility that this atom will give its only electron in the orbital to this, and this will have completely filled orbital and this will have completely vacant orbital, and this is a better situation in terms of stability than the first situation. So we basically explain the electrochemical or reduction reaction and oxidation reaction, commonly known as redox reactions, on the basis of electrochemical stability. And here when these ions are moving, we do not consider only the electrostatic force, we need to consider whether these ions are moving towards their better stability, and sometimes we find that they move against, electrons would move against the tendency of the electrostatic force, because their parent atom or their parent molecule is going to be more stable if they lose or if they gain one electron against the Coulomb force. You know, if sodium is neutral and it has an electron in its outermost shell, it gives that electron and it converts itself into a cation. Now this should not be the natural tendency which we should find in an electrostatic situation, but here, because in turn it might get a chloride ion and now it combines with it, and both of them are satisfied with their orbital theory, both of them will have their completely filled orbitals and they will share an ionic bond between them. So this is the basis, the electrochemical aspect of the electrolytic conduction needs to be understood. So we may have a situation sometimes wherein we have a solution, and when we put up a metal in such a situation, separately both of them were neutral and separately both of them were stable, but when they were given opportunity, we may have a situation that this metal would either gain or lose, or this can be a non-metal also. This should be taken as a pole. So if we have a material which is so made that it will have a tendency either to give electron or to take electron from this solution, and to be at higher potential or to be at lower potential with respect to this solution. So these are the electrochemical reactions. We call them redox reactions, and they give either positive potential or they may give negative potential depending upon the electrochemical properties of this electrolyte and this pole. So we may have situations in which we may find that we cannot explain all these things on the basis of electrostatic force, but based upon the electrochemical properties and based upon the electrochemical stability in one situation or the other situation, in which situation they are more stable, we can explain that how these electrolytic solutions behave and how these dissociations and how these electrolytic current are happening. So now we know that electrolytic conduction is a conduction of electric current, but it is different from metallic conduction in many contexts. It differs in its behavior with respect to the temperature change. Here the electrical conduction or the ionic conduction would be more, but this is not the case in the case of metallic one. We will do it more in the Ohm's law context. Then we will also see the concentration gradient. Sometimes the concentration of one ion is more than at one place than the other place. So we also need to see that what are the chemical tendencies. Sometimes the ion or the species of ion would not move against the concentration gradient because the chemical stability is not there. Maybe electrostatic forces would predict that the movement should be there, but actually the movement is not happening. So we have to see the concentration gradients also. Sometimes there are some chemical reactions going on, so sometimes there will be some precipitations around the ions, or sometimes there can be some gas bubbles that can cover this area, and the further movement of charge would not happen, though we have lot of charge here, but now this charge is insulated by some gas bubbles. So there are many things which are happening in electrolytic conduction because it is an electrochemical process which has the electrical events happening side by side and chemical reactions also occurring side by side, and based upon the total configuration of energy, which is a total summation of energy situation of the first initial type and the final type, which will decide whether a electrochemical process will happen, how will it happen, how long will it happen, where will it approach towards the equilibrium, and finally what will be the stage of the electrolytic conduction. This is very important concept when we come to the tissue environment. In tissue environment, electrolytic conduction is applicable. The concepts, the principles of electrolytic conduction or ionic conductions are applicable. Same is there in case of battery. In case of battery also, the concepts and principles of electrolytic conduction in case of biopotential electrodes, that means the electrodes that picks up the signals from skin or from biological tissue, are also considering these electrolytic conduction concepts, or they can be more clarified and understood on the basis of electrolytic conduction and ionic conduction rather than metallic conduction. So friends, now we will discuss another type of current, that is displacement current. The idea of this displacement current was proposed by James Maxwell when he was trying to solve an anomaly which he found in the circuit having a capacitor. He found that in the wires he was able to apply Ampere's circuital law, but in the region in between, that is known as dielectric, the region in between the capacitor field plates, he was not able to apply Ampere's circuital law. For simplicity, I would just state that to solve this anomaly and to apply Ampere's circuital law in this complete circuit, including the capacitor, James Maxwell proposed that there has to be a current in between these two capacitor plates. He further observed that this capacitor plate has electric field in between and this electric field which is changing in space gives rise to magnetic field. So there is an electric field in the dielectric that is in between these two capacitor field plates, and this electric field gives rise to magnetic field. Now, if this change in electric field gives rise to magnetic field, this is almost similar to a current in a conductor that gives rise to magnetic field that was observed by Oersted and experimentally proved also. So Maxwell proposed that there is a kind of logical consistency between these two situations, and based upon his logical consistency, he proposed that change in electric field is almost analogous to current, and he coined this concept known as displacement current for this changing electric field situation in the in circuits where we have capacitors or capacitor field plates with dielectric separating them, we apply the concept of displacement current, and carrying this concept of displacement current, he could apply Ampere circuital law in the wires also and in the capacitor area also. So in the capacitor area, he had this concept of direct current, displacement current. In the wires, there will be conduction current or the metallic. In a circuit, there may be situation where we may find different type of currents. Like in this circuit, we have a battery, which means here we have the electrolytic conduction or the ionic conduction. In these wires, we have metal, so we have conduction current or we have the metallic conduction or metallic current. And in this region of capacitor field plates, we have a dielectric and we have displacement current. So in a circuit, it is possible that we may have more than one type of current, but in a particular material, in an electrolyte, we will have the ionic conduction. In a metal, we will have the electron conduction or the conventional or the conduction current. And in the dielectric, we are going to have the displacement current. So we will apply the principles depending upon the material and depending upon the context. If we are given this kind of context, we'll apply the concept and principles of displacement current. If we are having a metallic conduction, we will apply the concepts and principles of metallic current. And if we have an electrolytic battery or a tissue environment or a electrolytic conduction, we will try to apply the concepts of electrolytic or ionic conduction. As the concept of this current was proposed by James Maxwell, this displacement current is also known as Maxwell's displacement current. Based upon the concept of displacement current, Maxwell further proposed that if we have change in electric field, we will have magnetic field, and if we have change of this field, the magnetic field will also change, and the changing magnetic field also gives electric field. So there will be a situation in which both of these changing field will give rise to each other, so on and so forth, and there will be a electromagnetic wave of such energy. So he proposed this concept of electromagnetic waves on the basis of the concept of displacement current, and the existence of electromagnetic waves was experimentally done and proved by Hertz, who was a German physicist. So hence we can say that the fundamental concept of displacement current is the basis of existence of electromagnetic waves. That is conceptually also proposed and that is experimentally also. So now we know, based upon the material or based upon the charge carrier or based upon the flow of electrical energy, we may have three different type of conductions or the three different type of currents. One is metallic current, other is electrolytic current, and the third one is displacement current. For simplicity, we can always see that wherever we have metal or wires, we are going to apply the metallic conduction. Wherever we have ions, we have electrolytes, we will apply the electrolytic conduction, and wherever we have dielectric or capacitors, we will apply the concepts of displacement current.